The Nobel Peace Prize for 2025 goes to a brave and committed champion of peace, to a woman who keeps the flame of democracy burning amidst a growing darkness. The Norwegian Nobel Committee has decided to award the Nobel Peace Prize for 2025 to Maria Corina Machado. She is receiving the Nobel Peace Prize for her tireless work promoting democratic rights for the people of Venezuela.
Good gosh. Thank you so much, Dee. I will start all over again. That's the second time I've done that this week. I don't know what's going on with me today. I muted myself before the show came on because I was coughing. I hope you guys at least heard the video. What I was saying is what very disappointing morning. No one could be more disappointed than Donald Trump because President Donald Trump certainly deserved to win the Nobel Peace Prize. Absolutely deserved to win the Nobel Peace Prize. And I was saying that I don't think it's any coincidence that they talk about democracy because I'll tell you what, the left version of democracy is very different than the explanation or the definition of democracy for the rest of us. And I have no doubt that the winner Maria Corina Machado did a great job over in Venezuela promoting peace and democracy, but our very own President Donald Trump has worked overtime to make sure that he creates peace all around the world. And I'm sure he's extremely disappointed. Good morning, Mandy. Thank you, Dee, for letting me know about the sound. Good morning, Vernon, Karen, and Linda. I don't know what's with me and buttons this week, but I am glad it's Friday. I'm Tabitha Hassell with Tabs on Tap. So happy it's Friday. You guys have no idea. I work all weekend, so no big break for me, but at the same time, everybody's happy about Friday. We're going to jump in with Col Joe Adams. I don't want to keep him waiting. Can't wait to talk to him. We're going to talk about the Freedom Banquet that's happening this weekend for the Washington Guard. We're going to talk a little bit, and hopefully Col Joe Adams can join us for this. We're going to have a little bit of a conversation. We're facing a lot of threats right now, not only from the cartels, but as well as terrorists, foreign and domestic. We need to start planning ahead. You know, most likely you're not going to be at your home when disaster strikes. So how do you plan ahead? So let's see if we can grab Col Joe Adams right now. I don't see him in the seat, so we'll give him a couple seconds to get ready. And then once he's in the seat, we'll bring him on. And hopefully he didn't forget he was going to join us today. I don't think he would have forgotten. He's just a very, very, very busy man with a very busy weekend ahead of him. But a lot of other things we're going to talk about today as well, outside of preparation. If you're not home, when disaster strikes, we had an elderly man who was removed from a Delta flight for wearing a MAGA hat. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about the Proud Boys. Maybe we need more Oath Keepers and Proud Boys around. I've got a video to show you of them kicking butt with Antifa. Drone strike on Ukraine, very serious drone strike. U.S. sending 200 troops to Israel. We're going to talk about that. We're going to catch up on the 3I Atlas comets. We've got a lot to talk about. I want to talk about Sysco Food Services monopolizing the restaurant industry. We're going to bring Col Joe Adams with us now and can't wait to see him. Col Joe Adams, good morning. So happy to see you as always. How are you doing this morning?
Good, ready to go. Hey,
I
that's a good topic. We never talked about that as far as in the guard we teach you and train about go bags. That's a bug out bag,
yes,
bug out vehicles. But more important than that is the get home bag. That
that's right.
something happens, natural disaster, the big one goes off, so you've got to get back to your loved ones. So, and it's not that difficult, but it's something to think about. And so, if you want to talk about that, I've got an example of a bulletproof pack that you can purchase,
Oh yeah.
and we teach that out early on in the guard. How do you get home? Now, I guarantee this: if you ever see my wife out in public, at grocery store, at anytime, she's carrying a pack. At the event this weekend, her pack will be under the table. So that's her get home bag. Very, very important. And you know, we call it weapons burden. And people want to carry a small gun because of the weight and everything, but after a while, you get used to it. I mean,
Yes.
you'll never see her out in public if she's not carrying a backpack by the top or over her shoulder. I mean, she's ready to go.
And you absolutely have to be. You have to be. And Colonel Adams, I always tell people, and you've probably heard me say it, we're always prepared at our home. We have our weapons, hopefully,
Mhm.
we have our non-perishable foods, we have our water supplies, we have our
Mhm.
hopefully our generator or solar chargers, where we have everything we need at home. But when something happens, whether that's a catastrophe, something natural, like let's say a volcano, let's say the big one goes Yellowstone, or let's just say there's a terror attack, a major terror, who knows, whatever the situation might be, bad storm. You might be at work, you might be in your vehicle on the highway. I know I probably won't be at home because I'm hardly ever at home. And what do you do? And most importantly, is you have to have the proper materials with you, but you also have to have a plan. Always tell people, make sure you have a plan A, B, and C for any time something goes wrong, because your kids are probably going to be at school. You or your husband or whatever the situation might be may not even be able to get home at a reasonable time.
Right. So just basically just start with a backpack that you can handle. Not some giant alert pack for long range patrol, but just like this. This is made by Guardian. This backpack here, and it is level 2 Kevlar bulletproof. So anything up but 9 millimeter, which is probably the bullet of choice in this country, this will stop it. And it's got your extra charger in there. You can plug in your cell phone, all that guy's pre-charged. But I highly suggest it. It's a small pack. We call it a medium ruck, and I suggest to invest in something like that. So and basically start packing for, like, if you were going to hike, how far are you going to hike? What's the weather conditions? Extra set of clothes. Like ladies are at work in high heels. Well, high heels is not a good idea if you got to walk home. And the you have to have you should have a predetermined location where a loved one can find you. We know where you're headed. Hey, something else we had when I was with Border Patrol, we had synchronized GPS. In other words, if I looked at the screen, I could tell where you were, and you looked at your GPS, and you could tell where I am. So, and they have these predetermined locations. It might be A, B, or C, depending on the disaster or the threat level. And so
Right.
you have that. I mean, worldwide, I can tell where you are and turn it on and sync it.
If you have that capability,
Yep.
what I'm always worried about in these days and times, that if something major happens, you may not have availability to use any type of electronics.
Mhm.
You may not be able to use a cell phone service or any type of communication device. We don't know what type of grid attack we might face. I always tell people, have three plans, A, B, and C, like just like you said, depending on what type of disaster it is, because you may not be able to get to location A, which is probably going to be your home. You might not be able to get to location B, which might be a family home or a vacation house. Maybe you need to come up with a plan. Let's say you're going to meet at the Shawnee Natural Forest. by tree number B, on 10 days, just wait for me there. Whatever your plan might be. But I think people have to also plan. You may not have communication at all.
Yeah, you got to plan for worst case scenario. Hopefully everything else works. But especially if you're a woman, I'm not being, anyway, if it's a mass catastrophe, a trauma one or something, and there's a lot of people trying to get home and they're on foot, cars abandoned on the highway, be careful. The best thing to do is hook up with a group, a like-minded group, and work with them. But when day one leaves and day two and if it's day three, it's taking some time and you have supplies and they weren't ready, all of a sudden be careful, because now you might have to defend yourself. Those power bars that you've got in your pack are going to start looking pretty good about day three, and if somebody's got a couple kids with them. So I prefer, if my plan is I'm on my own, I'm staying to myself.
That would be my plan as well.
Right. Yeah,
I know I'm a female, but I prefer to go it alone, if at all possible. But, Colonel Adams, in my vehicle, and part of the reason why I always buy Jeeps, because I always feel like if I'm out somewhere in a Jeep, it's going to be a little bit easier to get over different types of terrain than others. I have a Rubicon. That's what I had before. It's what I have now. And, I'm going to stick with that brand of vehicle. And, I carry an extra pair of clothes, something easy to move in. I carry a jacket because you want to have something that's going to provide heat, in your vehicle. And of course, a good pair of shoes that I keep in the back. But I also keep a tent, a small propane heater. I have one of those little My Buddy propane heaters with a bunch of little propane things. You just cannot be prepared enough. And I know people think that's crazy. But think about this, Colonel Adams, right now, if something happened right now in the next 2 minutes, and let's say a major catastrophe, you have to leave your place of work right now. How many people are prepared for that?
Hardly any. Yeah, you dress for the weather. I suggest a lightweight hiking boot will get you anywhere. So just common sense. An extra tourniquet. People say, well, I've got a belt for a tourniquet. No. I don't carry one of these. We carry two, because you might have to put a tourniquet on somebody else. And know how to use these cat tourniquets. This is the hot stuff right here. And don't buy one made in China. The stick breaks.
Right.
But it does. They're phonies. So just common sense. Pack for, if you were gonna walk for 3 days, then pack for something like that. Change of socks. The weather, I don't carry a poncho liner. I carry a poncho, and we use what's those little silver solar blankets, and not one but two. I mean, a solar blanket, like we've got solar blankets in our cars and the packs. It takes up no space whatsoever. And don't take one, take two, take three. You might have to help somebody else. So it's just common sense.
Absolutely so. I have a first aid kit, that I always keep in my vehicle, but, I can't see me traversing the country, carrying my first aid kit, but I might take the most important things, like you said, a tourniquet, to put in my bag to carry with me. Obviously, your non-perishable foods. I always tell people to keep a jar of peanut butter in your vehicle, because you know what? You can survive on peanut butter for a very long time with nothing else. Worst case scenario, you'll always have your peanut butter, and it's completely non-perishable.
I think the best idea is those power bars, because they're self-contained. They last forever. They give you the energy, because you're just trying to get home. So I was I was speaking about the topic, and somebody says, "Well, where's your get home bag?" I go, "In my pocket." And they go, "What do you mean?" So I said, "I got a multi-tool in my left pocket and a roll of electrical tape in my right pocket." I'm a dangerous man. And so just because I do that and what I can get by on doesn't mean that you can.
That's absolutely correct. I know I would probably need more than the average person. And for me, I have lung issues. I have inhaler I have to carry. I wear contact lenses. I got to make sure I can see. Those are some other things. And also, something that I think is important to talk about is weapons. Because, Colonel Adams, obviously, ideally, you want to have a weapon with you in this type of situation. However, most people don't carry a weapon in their vehicle on a daily basis for the obvious reasons that people will often break into your vehicle if they think you have one in there.
That's like, we're different here. I'm always armed, or I can reach right now and grab the pistol off the counter. So we don't even address the weapons issue, because we have to assume that you are already armed, but extra ammunition in your backpack.
Right, but most people aren't armed.
Well,
And obviously you would suggest that they should be. But here's the thing, Colonel Adams, I would suggest that they should be also. And this is a really big topic, and I know you have an answer for it. How do you secure your weapon in your vehicle? Because a lot of people drive but commute back and forth to work. They might work at a workplace where they'll get fired if they get caught with a weapon inside the workplace.
Don't get caught. Simple as that. Don't get caught. I'm very, very non-sympathetic about people who leave their weapons in the car. No. Why would you leave a weapon in a car? You take it with you. And I know people out there saying, "Oh, well, yeah, but I work in a hospital. You can't do it." I can't help that.
Right.
Now, I do know that there's some hospitals here recently, and they have security personnel, which are basically sometimes secondary police officers or police officers assigned to the hospital. Unofficially, this is happening. Unofficially, the heads of the hospitals have now allowed the security personnel to bring a rifle, AR-15, to work and keep it in a stored locker in the hospital.
Good.
They're not joking around. They know about the threat. If that Trauma 1 gets pulled off in St. Louis, the best target right now is Barnes Hospital. And I've got 2 guardsmen in Barnes Hospital right now. And the first thing I thought about, we need to get them out of there. But no, the weapons is second nature. So I really can't comment enough on that, because I expect at least the people that I train are always armed.
Correct.
Period. That's just the way it is. I mean,
and the way that it should be. And I do think that the majority of Americans probably could, take a weapon into the workplace without it being detected if you're not stupid, and showing it to coworkers or flaunting it around or leaving it out. I think very few people have a workplace in which you're going to be searched or go through metal detectors and so on. I think that would be very rare. So I don't personally think that most people have an excuse not to have a weapon. Now, some people like myself, I am interstate. I travel back and forth between different states. Each state has gun laws but it's the same thing. If you're not getting pulled over, if you're not being checked, who's going to know? Don't do anything dumb to where they have to check you.
It's a no-brainer. So I don't even address that issue, because that's your problem. That's your security. But you can pack all the backpacks you want to, but unless you're armed, you're a victim.
Right.
And as the disaster goes on for a day, 2 days, 3 days, those people will change. All of a sudden, you're eating a power bar and they haven't eaten in 3 days. I got news for you. They're not your friend.
Right. I agree. And I think my issue with the power bars, I've never found a power bar that I like. Now, I get it that obviously it's good nutrition if you're on the run. I don't like peanut butter, quite honestly, either. But I always keep peanut butter, in my vehicle. Sometimes I have power bars. I'm not a big fan of power bars. But, one of the other things I want to mention, and Allison, I think, was it Allison that brought it up, a water filter straw.
Yep.
I have a Life straw. I keep one in the vehicle. I keep one in the house. And it's very important to happen, because while, if something happens and you're on the move, it's not like you can carry a case of water with you. You're going to have a way to filter the water that you can find.
Right. Yeah. Of course, she's carrying bottled water. She's basically set up for 24 hours. Now, also, we have reconnoiter points. She knows that I'm coming for her, no matter what it takes. I've got a fully operational military Hummer that can go anywhere, and I got a tank. Yes. I'm coming for her. Just to get to that point, hunker down, defend yourself, because I'm coming.
And Colonel Adams, I'm so glad you said that, because that's really one of the benefits to joining a group. Now, I know a lot of people who listen to the show are not in the St. Louis area. But let's just say, as an example, people who are in St. Louis who do join the Washington Guard, your members come first. You're going to make sure that all of your members have been found, located, and are safe above anything else. And, for people who aren't in the St. Louis area, I'm sure there's probably a group in your area. We can't have a Colonel Joe Adams everywhere, unfortunately. I've told you time and time again, I wish we had a Washington Guard, in every community, but that cannot be. So I do think it's very important to hook up and look up someone similar in your area to a Washington Guard. If you're in the St. Louis area, contact the Washington Guard, because that is an extra layer of safekeeping.
Oh yeah, and plus all of our members have radios. We can all talk to each other, and we got a repeater station. So for us it's easy. Yeah, there were some people out there that had joined the Guard, didn't have any experience. It was difficult for them, but everybody's falling in line. And you're right. I mean, Donald Trump Jr. said the same thing. I wish we had 1,000 more Washington Guard.
That's right. That's right.
We can handle it. We're fine.
Well, what's great is you get that group, the benefits of being part of a group, safety in numbers, without having to worry about your fellow group members, harming you, because you are down to that last power bar. You're going to go out, you're going to retrieve your group members, and then you're going to come back to home base where you're set up, for a very long time. So that's going to dissipate a lot of the fears that, a lot of people have.
Yeah, I used to do survival running. We were studying some of the old Indian tribes out in the Phoenix area, and for communication, because they didn't have cell phones, so they would send runners out for communication to the different tribes. But I'm not big on food. As far as food is just another. Food takes water to digest. So here's a question for you: if you're in the desert and you've been out there for a week, which is better to have?
Absolutely.
Wait a minute. Which is better to have, a fifth of whiskey or a T-bone steak? You could only eat one. What would you do? Which one?
I'm going to guess the whiskey.
Yep. You know why? Because it takes water to digest that steak. So just because you're carrying food, you got to have water to digest it.
Right, correct. And quite honestly, Colonel Adams, if part of my own plan, if something like that happens, is I'm probably not going to eat food that first 24 hours anyway. Just because water is going to be important to me. But the last thing I want to do is bog my body down, by eating. And for me, eating is a different maybe story for other people. But I don't like the feeling of being full. I eat little tiny bits, and then my body feels bogged down. And I don't know if other people are that way, but I want to feel lighter. I want to be able to move better and not have to worry about consuming a bunch of calories. I think I could survive for a few days. I'm not too worried about it without the food, but I need the water.
A real danger is alien bacteria. I've been on several LERP operations in the jungles, and I've seen some of the guys when there were some natural fruits. There was some like jojoba beans out in the desert. You don't want to do that. You want to get what's the best survival attitude you can have is get the hell out of there.
That's right. That's right.
Really,
exactly. Don't be worrying about all that stuff.
We were doing a long-range patrol in Nicaragua. We knew it was going to take 10 to 14 days to complete the mission and get back to base camp. And all we had for supplies was a few MREs and canned goods. And the villagers couldn't wait to put the canned goods in their pack. Well, not me. I gave them my canned goods, but I went through the MREs and took out every pack of cocoa powder. High energy, sugar, get me there. And I lived on cocoa powder for 10 days and didn't have the burden of all those canned goods. And some of them you had to cook and you have to open them up. So I cut my weight on my pack. I'm packing for 2 weeks, almost nothing. I carried more ammunition and less food.
Right, absolutely.
And I'm here I sit.
And that's a very essential thing, though, to talk about, because I do talk to people once in a while, and they'll say, "Oh, I've got an entire, pantry full of canned goods." I'm like, "Well, what are you going to do? Are you going to bog your car down, with 10 cases of green beans?" You cannot do that. You have to have either freeze-dried food, optimal, for me, I would have seeds, if I end up having to stay somewhere long term. But, but more important, like you just said, you need sources, and they don't have to necessarily be something you eat, but it can be something you drink.
Yeah, but really dangerous. I was talking to a guy. Yeah, I think he does roofs. He's a contractor. Nicest guy, nice family. And I said, how much preparation have you had for in case there's a problem or something like that, or your kids, or what's your plan with your wife if she has to get home and there's a disaster? He goes, well, I got an AR-15. I said, what do you mean? He goes, well, if I need something from my family, I'll just go take it. Whoa. Whoa.
Not a good attitude to have.
Right. And this was, I've known this guy for years. And so instead of preparing, he plans on taking your stuff.
As will most people. Will most people.
Right. So the
That's
most
exactly
important
right.
the most important survival thing you can have is the gun. Because if you don't have that, all you're doing is collecting stuff for the bad guys.
That's right. And it's sad to say, but that is absolutely the case. And somebody asked me the other day, sent me a message because you and I were talking about this type of thing, and I said, well, what would be my first, steps? Now, you might have different steps than me, so I'm kind of curious what your thoughts are on this. For me personally, let's say I'm out at a job site, catastrophe strikes, I've got to hurry up and make my way to either plan A, B, or C. The very first thing I'm going to do is go get a full tank of gasoline if I don't already have one. If you're prepared, you should already have one. But if you don't, because I feel like that's going to be the first thing to go. Now, then, secondly, I might go to an ATM. I generally try to keep cash around, but a lot of people don't. But then, when you really think about it, how much good is money going to do you? Because when things get crazy, people are going to loot the stores. You're not going to, that cash isn't going to serve much of a purpose to you. So I was curious what your steps would be, what your first 1, 2, and 3 would be.
Well, that reminds me. I haven't thought about this in decades, but I used to. I took 3 gold sovereigns, little bitty gold coins, size of a dime, right, and put tape around them, and they were always in the toe of my boot. I just thought of that because I have small gold currency, but I'm in hostile lands. And we used to, when I was in South Africa, they gave us a gold ring and a bracelet. And the gold ring weighed 1 ounce exactly, and the gold bracelet weighed 3 ounces. So we had barter in case we get jammed at some border someplace or have to buy something or commandeer somebody's car. We had some compensation, but I always had 3 gold sovereigns in tape in the toe of my boot.
Good plan.
Yeah. Yeah, I forgot all about that. Yeah.
Because I feel like and we don't know how bad the situation might be, but if the situation is bad, I just don't think cash is going to serve much of a purpose. You're going to be far better off either, like you said, with gold, silver, or items to barter with.
Yeah. I won't disclose it, but I do have a plan, and we're quite prepared. So.
Oh, yes. Most certainly so. And I think everybody needs to start thinking about that, because Colonel Adams, every day, I'm hearing about more credible plans against Americans because under a Donald Trump presidency, they hate us. Other countries hate us, criminals hate us, all the bad guys and the evil in this world, they hate us. And I'm sure you've heard the threats from the Sinaloa cartel that are telling people, do not come to Mexico. If you come to Mexico to these resorts where you think you're safe, you're not safe. Don't come here. And how long is it before they start attacking us in our own country? Because they're desperate. They're losing billions of dollars. They're in a very desperate situation right now.
I tell everybody if you're going close associates, like I've got an ex-wife, and all she does is go travel and with her husband, going on all these. I don't know. She loves Mexico, right? And I said, well, if y'all go to Mexico, don't call me. So if you get jammed up down there, I am not coming after you because I'm warning you right now. My groomer for my dog, her and her husband was planning a trip going down to, whatever that place is on the peninsula in Mexico. And I said, well, Mandy, she said, well, if I get in trouble, I'll just call you. I go, don't call me. I'm not coming for you, because I'm telling you right now, don't go.
Right.
Carbo
That's
St.
good.
Luca, yeah, Carbo St. Luca, whatever that place is.
Bravo. Yeah.
Yeah, Carbo. It was funny, years ago, KC Radio hired me to go down and get an interview with one of the rock groups that was breaking up. I forget. Anyway, and it was real nice then. No, if you go to those places, the further you are away from your home and your supplies, the more dangerous it is. So, and in this world, this world is more dangerous today than it was yesterday. Now,
Every day.
how long, how long can that exist? How long can we stand that? Knowing when you wake up in the morning, I'm in more danger today than I was yesterday. How long can that go on? So
Right. The next 3.5 years, I'm going to bet, maybe even longer. And Colonel Adams, I've been talking about it for the past couple of weeks. I know you and I talked about it a little bit on Monday, but I'll tell you, we talked about a lot. Some people who maybe weren't here with us last week or a couple of weeks ago, Monday, some of what Colonel Adams and I are talking about is a credible threat. It has been deemed a credible threat in which several terror organizations have obtained large quantities of uniforms, whether that be police uniforms, military uniforms, doctor type uniforms, nurses, and their plan is to disguise themselves as doctors, nurses, security personnel, police officers, firemen, on down the line. And they're a long list of areas they plan to attack: grocery stores, police stations, hospitals, most credible threat being against hospitals. And it's a very, very credible threat. And if you listen to the FBI, the Department of Homeland Security, they claim that it's going to happen. It's not a matter of if, it is when. And so we've been talking a lot about preparing for those instances. And every day I'm hearing a new institution added to that list. And but here's the thing, Colonel Adams, do you view it as a credible threat?
I have to, because my sources in DHS that give it to me. I had it when it was classified, and of course we couldn't talk about it. And then I was shocked when one of my police officers called me and said, "Hey, they declassified that document." I go, "Why would they do that?" Well, because if they didn't, and there was a trauma one attack, which is they're saying is going to happen before the end of February, and they had a trauma one attack, they become responsible. If you knew, why didn't you tell the public to prepare for it? So
exactly.
Instead of having blood on their hands, they released that to the public.
Well, you're nicer than I am. It was released to me about 2 or 3 weeks ago. And the person who gave me the information, expected me to talk about it, because I'm like, I'm not going to, you're telling me this for a reason. And that means to me, and of course, I'm never going to disclose who gave it to me. But, for me, that means I need to talk about it. I need to warn people that this is going to happen. And the warning started coming out about a week prior to the Charlie Kirk Memorial is when I first started hearing it and talking about it. And, it to me, when you have all of these different sources saying these are credible threats, I do think we have to take it very seriously.
Oh, you have to. Here's the thing I find interesting in that document. I was warned that the attack will happen in this country, several attacks simultaneously.
Yes.
Before the end of February. Wait a minute, Ramadan runs into March. And I find that very interesting. So if that's accurate, then they know something that we don't know, but they've warned you over the general idea that there's going to be an attack.
Correct, because it can take time to plan a large-scale attack like that. And they're going to hear chatter, and also we always have to worry about our Christian holidays as well.
I always said if I was a terrorist and I had cells all over the place, that I would blow up a Walmart simultaneously across the country, because Walmart reaches into every family somehow, some way. Groceries, everything. They have no security there. They have security, even has some undercover people that I understand were working now. That doesn't mean anything.
Correct.
You can walk in the front door. I joked the other day. I went inside. I saw one of the managers. I was asking for a particular thing, and I said, "What are you doing about security anymore?" Oh, so it's we've got people here. Really? I could have walked in. I could have walked in the front door with a nuclear bomb. Really?
They're literally doing nothing. I kid you not. 2 weeks ago, I try to avoid Walmart as much as possible, but I live in a tiny town, and Walmart Rural King is all we have. And I
Yeah.
went into a Walmart a couple weeks ago, and there was a girl, she was probably, I don't know, 17, 18 years old, standing at the end of the self-checkout lane, and I heard her talking to another employee, and she said, "Oh yeah, this person, they just walked out with all their stuff and didn't pay." She's like, "Well, did you tell anyone? What are you going to do about it?" And this little girl, she's like, "I'm not going to do anything about it." That's their security.
Yeah. I hope I'm wrong. That was my idea. How could I create mass chaos almost instantaneously across the country? But here's about the trauma one. The reason they're going to attack hospitals is because when they shut the hospital down and defend their defensive posture, when the real police show up, they go around and kill everybody in the building.
Correct.
That's why they've got attacking hospitals.
Right. That sounds like the plan. And there were specific hospitals too. I'm not sure if you heard that there were specific hospitals. You're frozen on my end. You might not be on anyone else's end. But while I can't hear
I think my screen's
there
frozen.
you are.
Yeah.
It might be just on my end. But Colonel Adams, grocery stores also are on the list. Which kind of goes with your plan about the Walmarts, is if they, plan to attack at grocery stores, then obviously that's a two-phase attack, because not only is it going to create the attack itself, but it's also going to cause chaos, because a lot of people in these communities aren't going to have a grocery store to go to after the ensuing chaos.
But it's ingenious, the fact that they've chose hospitals, because where could you get that many people in a confined place that basically can be barricaded in? That's
Correct.
And a bunch of sick people laying in bed. What are they going to do? Fight back?
Right.
What are they going to use their bedpan? And hospitals are unarmed, except for the security people. So now we have a limited amount of weaponry to fight off the bad guys. Ingenious.
Yeah, I just wonder why. I heard the top cities were, was it Miami and Houston, if I have that correctly? And I'm not sure why those two cities, but I would think, but the threat, of course, encompasses the entire United States. But I heard the threat was highest in those two areas.
Well, one thing is, Houston is the nucleus for Islamist extremists in this country.
Correct.
Always be aware if you see a Texas plate. Now, up in St. Louis, they've got a lot of people with tourism and all that kind of stuff. You don't see a lot of Texas plates in Washington, Missouri. And when I told the people, anytime you see a Texas plate in Franklin County, text it to me, and we're keeping a file. Then listen to this. So one of my police officers said, "Hey, Colonel, we found a dead naked guy in a car. I think it was in O'Fallon. He'd been dead for a while." And he says, "And guess what? Texas plates."
Oh no!
I go, "You found a naked dead guy?" "Yeah, in a Texas plate on the car." He goes, I didn't even know how to decipher that. I don't know what that means. And it was a Hispanic man too, probably a cartel thing. Why he was naked, I have no idea.
Yeah, well, that's a crazy situation, no question about it. And and I think that cartels are, outside of just terrorism in our country, I think the cartels are a threat. Look, when we shut down our southern border, now we're going after the drugs coming out of Venezuela. In the Caribbean, that their cartels are earning over $1 billion a week, between bringing people back and forth across the border and drugs. And, what are they going to do now? And now we're preparing to strike them within Mexico and within Venezuela with airstrikes. So of course they're furious.
It hasn't happened. Well, my concern was there's all the different cartels, and there's some new cartels. If they ever unify,
Correct.
Right now they're still fighting each other for turf. But in 2010, when I found out that firsthand that the cartels was moving a lot of weapons and munitions across the border into United States, in interrogation, when the federal authorities had the cartel people and for control of the narc. So then it says a freezer. Oh, there we go again. Okay. I don't know if that's on your end.
No,
or
you're fine. We hear you.
Okay. Anyway, so never before in this country we have so many problems, and the problems are now internal. We've always had countries who wanted to hit us and invade us in war. You know, think about that. World War II. They didn't invade the United States.
Correct.
How can you be in a war? That's how secure we were. Thank God for the oceans. And we had some we had a couple of German subs off the coast and some Japanese stuff. They tried to burn down our force with the balloons, but for the most part, we went unscathed in World War II. Well, those days are gone because
yes, they are.
The enemy is amongst us. They're
Correct.
here, and we let them in, and we know who they are. We even know where they are, and we do nothing.
You're right.
People don't want to face the inevitable. Now, I'm not going to say too much because that's part of my speech tomorrow.
Oh, yeah.
So people will not face the inevitable.
You're right.
If you think for a second that this country will not implode eventually, it's inevitable. It has to, because we look like the Roman Empire. We're bringing in the bad guys and allow them to come in. No, we're not doing what's best for the American citizens because of our ridiculous politicians fight. Oh, my favorite, I think we might have talked about this on Monday, but my favorite new term is the socialist wing of the Democrat Party. Whoa. The socialist, what? When did that become?
Very true, correct statement.
When did that come? No, but now even the Democrats are using it. So it's like, okay. So when did that become okay? When did it become okay for communists to run for office in this country? Really?
Correct. And and it's happening more every single election cycle. And they're actually getting elected. I'll never understand, Colonel Adams. Just New York City as an example. We have Mamdani running for mayor, and the LGBTQ community is supporting this guy. Now think about that. This guy wants Sharia law. What happens under Sharia law? They persecute anyone in the LGBTQ community. They throw them from roofs, they burn them alive, but yet these people want this guy to win. There's no sense in it whatsoever.
Before that guy ran for office, he was openly talking about how he hated America and Islam's going to take over. Now he's changed his story.
Oh, well, of course, he openly talked about how much he hated gay people as well and how they should all be put to death. And he's also changing his story about that. He's backtracking on socialism. When he first started running for mayor, I have videos of him talking about socialism, about state-ran, government-ran grocery stores, and other socialistic ideas. And he's backtracking on that as well. But we all know what the guy has at heart. And I'm telling you, if there's one thing in this country we need to do, it is banning Sharia law. That would be, if anybody asked me what my number one was, it would be banning Sharia law, because that would take care of a lot of issues we're having right now.
Yeah, well, I got a better solution, but I can't do it on your show and get you kicked off the air. All right, hey, and you know what I'm thinking.
I do.
Okay, this is it. All right. Tomorrow, 5 to 9, Saturday, October the 11th, Nyer Road. It's a road just outside of Union. It's a parish church, beautiful facilities. Of course, I'll be speaking, open the ceremony up. Jamie Allman, your buddy's going to be the MC.
Love Jamie Allman.
Yep, Jamie Allman's the MC, and Colonel Jack Jackson, badass Colonel Jack Jackson right there. Former test pilot for the Harrier jet. The hell with that job. Anyway, and of course you got I think Jamie's buddy Doug Giles is speaking, founder of Warriors and Wild Men. Love that term. Anyway,
Yeah.
we still got a handful of tickets left. It's all to support first responders and veterans. And please come out and join us. It's a great time, great food. And I cannot
Yeah.
believe this is our 4th annual event. Wow, time flies, huh?
I'm so excited for you and for the event. I was there last year. It was absolutely fantastic. I had such a great time catching up with people. And, honestly, the way that the Washington Guard, holds up and supports our first responders was so touching. It was so touching. They all stood up. We knew who they all were. There were several tables donated to first responders.
Yeah.
And I talked to a lot of them, and they were all so, so happy to be honored.
Yeah, I didn't, I'll be honest with you, I didn't even know you were there.
I know, till
know.
after the dinner was over.
Yeah,
I saw Deanna, I talked to her at the beginning.
I caught you going out the door. I go like, wait a minute, when did you get here? Because I would have now announced that you were there because you got a lot of fans out there, but I didn't even know you were there, and I apologize.
Oh, no, it's okay. I came in, I was very quiet. I came in, I talked to Deanna for a couple minutes. I went and took my seat, and that's pretty much where I stayed.
Yeah, just everything's bought online these days. So I had some guy I spoke before the Washington Boat Club last night, and they wanted to buy tickets, but yeah, everything's online these days. So
Yes.
just the WashingtonGuard.com, and then click on events, get your tickets. Like I say, there's a handful left. Come out and have a good time. Oh, the drinks are on me. Open bar, open bar. The drinks are on me. So
beautiful banquet. It's
Yep.
fantastic speakers. Jamie Ullman, I absolutely adore, and I think it's so exciting that he's going to be your primary speaker this year. I really think you shouldn't miss it. I would be there if I didn't have to work.
yeah, I heard you.
I would be number one, but my work is crazy these days, and it is nearly impossible to get away. I tried, but next year I'm gonna hopefully do a better job, or
Yeah.
whatever the next event might be.
Well, that's because you're good at what you do. If you're good at what people say, well, my business is slammed. I go, good. I have no free time. Good. That means I want to hire you when you get a chance. So
I hope that's the case.
Yeah, the WashingtonGuard.com, and click on events, and you come out and try and get to me. And I had somebody the other day. I was talking to militia down in Texas, and they said, "Oh, we don't do banquets and raffles. We don't do any of that." And I go, "Well, you're making a mistake."
Yes,
Because events like this connect you with the public.
that's correct.
This is not an event for my militia. This is an event to interact with the public and show them what we are all about.
That's right, and you do a fantastic job of it.
And then let's see. Oh, then the week after that is our muster, and then the day after the muster, let's see. Yeah, this Saturday's the event. Next Saturday is our training muster, and Sunday after that, I'm training the Franklin County SWAT team on how to drive an armored vehicle.
Oh, I love it.
So again, connect to the community. People, love you to death. I get to make some phone calls about that trauma one thing. I got to talk to some people, and Tabitha, sorry you can't make it, but hope to see you people out there. I know Allison will be there.
Yeah.
Allison's everywhere. So.
I would love to have gone and got to meet Allison. And Colonel Adams, thank you so much for joining us. That's Colonel Joe Adams of the Washington Guard, WashingtonGuard.com. Please check out their website, get a ticket, go out and support not only the Washington Guard, but the first responders. Trust me, there'll be a lot of first responders on hand as well. How can you miss out on Jamie Ullman on top of that?
Yep. Open bar. Thanks,
and open bar.
See you next Monday.
Thank you, Colonel Adams. I hope you have a fantastic time, and I will look forward to catching up to you.
Thank you.
That was Colonel Joe Adams again with the Washington Guard. I've had their little ticker running across the bottom of the screen, the WashingtonGuard.com. And I'll tell you, it really is a fantastic experience, and it is my loss that I have to unfortunately work. But I was there last year. I had a really great time. Really great group of people. I took time out after the dinner to go around and kind of talk to some of the first responders. I knew a lot of them. A lot of them I didn't know. And, just a really good time. There was a gentleman there too the colonel that I talked to this guy. I don't remember how I came across him, but maybe Colonel Adams introduced me, and Colonel Adams, did a really fantastic job with this guy. From what I understand, I think this guy was just walking down the road, and Colonel Adams stopped to ask him if he was okay, if he could provide any assistance, gave the guy a ride, started talking to him. The guy was having a, tough time in life. And, he talked to him, and I don't know what the conversations necessarily were, but the young man told me, he said, he saved my life. Here I met him in the middle of nowhere, however that turned out, and he saved my life. And this guy, he didn't feel like he belonged there. That's how how he felt, is he's like, I don't think I belong here. I'm like, of course you belong here. Of course you belong here. He's had a tough time. And I was so glad to see that not only does Colonel Adams, have so many, ideas when it comes to providing security and safety for yourself, your family, within the Washington Guard. And of course, they go out and they assist in all these different catastrophes, whether it's tornadoes or storms or flooding or accidents, whatever you may have. But they're also, have a little bit of a ministry to the people in the area, who are in need. And I can't tell you, I've been interviewing, gosh, Colonel Adams for years. I don't even remember when the first time was, many years ago. And there have been so many people who have contacted me and said, I ran into Colonel Adams, and I ran into Colonel Adams, and he saved me. And, my life was a panic because I didn't know what to do. I was fearful until I joined the Washington Guard. So please reach out to WashingtonGuard.com. So happy to have Colonel Adams. Good morning, Dawn. Happy to have you here this morning. And let's see, tell Deanna you have equipment for the comms team. Good morning, Elizabeth, Nancy, Phyllis. I saw some different people popping through while we were talking. And so I kind of want to go back and reiterate a little bit. We talked about preparation, just because, hey, if you're caught in a catastrophe, you're probably going to be in your vehicle. You might be at work. Please plan ahead. Please plan ahead. Colonel Adams had a lot of good ideas there. Make sure reach out to the Washington Guard. They'd probably give you a good list of things that you might be able to do. Have a plan A, B, and C, because we always think if something happens, I'm going to hurry up and go back to my home. Well, what if you cannot go to your home? What if you can't get home? You need to make sure that you have a plan for your children, that you have someone designated to pick up your children. If you're a member of the Washington Guard, maybe someone that's another member. Otherwise, make sure it's somebody who's invested in your children, a grandparent, an aunt, an uncle, whoever it may be. Make sure it's somebody who's invested in your children. So that way, when catastrophe strikes, they're not just worried about themselves, but they're worried about your children too. So, make sure that's part of your plan. Make sure you have a full tank of gas. If you don't have a full tank of gas, go and get one, provided that you can take your vehicle. They're like Colonel Adams said, there might be a situation where you can't even be in your vehicle. You might be on foot. Make sure you have that go bag where you have, hiking boots or comfortable shoes to wear, a comfortable outfit. I work in a black suit with black dress shoes. Would not be very comfortable traversing terrain in that outfit. Make sure Colonel Adams suggested power bars. I said maybe a jar of peanut butter, something that's non-perishable that gives nutrition. Allison suggested a life straw. Absolutely, a straw that filters water. You can handle not having food for a couple of days. You cannot go without water. Make sure you have a way to get water. You're not going to want to have 10 bottles of water in your go bag. At least I wouldn't. So make sure you have that life straw and at least a bottle so you can find a couple bottles to collect some water. But, have your plan A, your plan B. But, plan B might be, hey, children or family members, if we cannot reach our homes, let's plan on meeting at this designated spot, wherever that might be, something everyone can remember. Because you have to remember, you may not have access to a cell phone. I know my cell phone right now, if I'm out of range, I've got that service now where I can use a satellite system. So I use my phone, I put it up in the air, even if I don't have a cell phone signal, and I'm able to obtain a satellite signal. And as long as I can hold it in a certain spot and reach that satellite, then I can send messages or call out if I need to. So make sure that you have that backup plan. And I know Colonel Adams also talked about having chargers. Make sure you have a little side charger for your phone. I'm big on solar chargers. You can go to a lot of places online and get a solar charger for your cell phone or other little items for $20. There might even be less than that now. I think everyone should have a small solar charger, so small solar generator, something along those lines. But we're facing increasing threats every single day, not just foreign terrorists, but domestic terrorists as well. We have these groups like Antifa. I didn't think to talk about Colonel Adams about this today, but we'll talk about it on Monday. We're at war. I mean, within our country, people say civil war is coming. Civil war is here. It's not coming. It's already here. Maybe it's the beginning stages, but it's already here. When you have groups like Antifa going completely unimpeded in our cities, attacking law enforcement officers, attacking law enforcement facilities, they're going unimpeded. And we have governors like Pritzker, and there's trust me, there's more than just JB Pritzker, who are doing everything they can to protect these people who are attacking us. We are already in a civil war, whether you realize it or not. Maybe it hasn't affected you yet, but if it continues, it absolutely will, because these people are not going to give up. They're not going to give in. They're going to continue doing what they're doing, and that is causing absolute chaos. Absolute chaos. They are against any form of law enforcement. They don't recognize American laws. It's a really big problem. And Jay says, good morning, Jay. Jay, make sure you go back and watch Colonel Joe Adams. You don't want to miss what he had to say. And let's see here. Oh, and that was a part 2 message. Thank you. And part 2, tell Deanna, I see. And then, so that's one of the things I want to talk about. Remember back in the day, we had the Proud Boys and the Oath Keepers. Now, the Proud Boys and the Oath Keepers kept groups like Antifa at bay. A lot of people didn't realize what the daily activities of groups like Proud Boys and Oath Keepers were. I've got a little video here. I'm not going to play it. I'm not going to play the whole thing, but I want to make sure you guys see this, because this is what the Proud Boys did when they were here and active. And of course, this is exactly why they were baited on January 6th, and now why their primary members are in prison and receive these very long prison sentences. Hopefully, they will all be pardoned by Donald Trump and able to go home, because it's really unfair. But this is why the government under Joe Biden came after the Proud Boys and the Oath Keepers, because this is how they used to handle Antifa. This is a battle between the Proud Boys and Antifa.
I'm fed up of people. Oh man, they're getting beat up. They're getting beat up.
I'm not going to play that entire video. It's kind of ugly. But basically what it transpired in this video and many others is that when groups like Antifa would gather, now, sometimes it was a Revolutionary Communist Party, sometimes it was otherwise known as RevCom, sometimes it was Antifa, sometimes it was a Black Lives Matter protest, which was also largely Antifa and RevCom mixed within those groups, causing problems. And then we'd have the Proud Boys and the Oath Keepers protecting law enforcement facilities, protecting police officers, protecting citizens, innocent civilians. They were protecting businesses primarily. So those were some of the things these two groups did. And you don't hear about that anymore. We don't have anyone fighting for our side anymore. We don't. When you see these videos now of Antifa or RevCom, it's a whole mixture of groups that you see out there in front of these ICE facilities. There's no one to stand up against them like there used to be. And that's not, again, a coincidence that those two groups were completely abolished, named as in fact, they were designated as terror groups under the Biden administration and imprisoned. Now, what I would like to know, and again, this is just me being impatient, not talking down about I can't talk, not talking down about Donald Trump. And by saying this is just me being impatient. I want to see something happen now. Antifa has already been designated as a terror group. I want to see them rounded up. I want to see them charged with insurrection. and I want them to be sent to federal prison. That is the only way we solve this situation. And until that happens, every single day, our law enforcement officers are in danger. Until that happens, it's not happening fast enough. We've designated them as terrorists. Now let's go and pick them up. We see them in front of these ICE facilities. We see them ambushing our federal law enforcement officers. We see them setting fires to police stations, to police vehicles, and nothing's happening. Absolutely nothing's happening. Why? Because we have these absolutely ridiculous Democrat leaders in these various communities who not only promote these groups like Antifa to come in and cause destruction, but they stand down. When you look at these videos of what these groups like Antifa and RevCom are doing at these, law enforcement facilities, they're not doing anything. Look, what's happening in Chicago? Nothing. Do you see any local police officers tackling these people, taking them to prison? No, we don't see a darn thing happening. Jay says they are giving Antifa a license to continue. That's exactly what they're doing. And Jay says, let's see, still have many Democrats claiming Antifa isn't an organization, which is insane, isn't it? Absolutely insane to even think about such a thing. Man, it aggravates me. I am ready to see some action. I am. Don't go out and do the action yourself. Leave it up to the folks in charge. Leave it up to the Trump administration. It's nothing against Donald Trump. It's just not happening fast enough. And now we have another federal judge giving a temporary order that the Trump administration cannot send 200 National Guards troops into the city of Chicago. I mean, what in the world is happening? I don't understand it. Pritzker, I know I have a statement from him here. Here it goes right here. He said, Donald, this was just, I don't know if this was this morning or yesterday. I think it was yesterday. Donald Trump is not a king and his administration is not above the law. No, JB Pritzker, they're just trying to honor the law, uphold the law. But I guess Antifa, they're lawful individuals, aren't they? Today, the court confirmed what we all know. There is no credible evidence of a rebellion in the state of Illinois, except for the fact that we have countless videos of Antifa and other agitators in front of the ICE facilities. We have them ambushing ICE officers in the streets of, guess what? The city of Chicago and the surrounding suburbs. So yes, that is absolutely happening. Certainly not lawful. Last weekend, we'll see what happens on Monday. We'll give another update. Last weekend, 30 people were shot within the city of Chicago, but that's okay, isn't it? That's perfectly fine. And he goes on to say, and no place for the National Guard in the streets of American cities like Chicago. Jay says troops are already there. Yes, but we were sending 200 more troops. And, it's frustrating. There's no question about it. It's frustrating. It's frustrating to me that certain governors and mayors, certain police chiefs in some areas. I've been having these online arguments with some police chief in Vermont, of all places. This guy just keeps coming after me. I'm like, you're a police chief. Stop empowering the criminals. To me, when you find a police chief who empowers criminals, they need to be removed from their position. Judges who specifically go out and weaponize their power against Americans need to be removed from their posts. They need to be disbarred. And so JB Pritzker, what he's saying in his post here on social media is so far from being accurate. He means a liberal judge that he helped get into a position has temporarily blocked these 200 National Guards troops from being able to enforce any action in the city of Chicago. Not just any judge, his judge. Big difference, big difference. Jay says they will lose on appeal because of the previous precedents and presidential powers. Jay, they absolutely will. And quite honestly, I haven't heard anything yet from Donald Trump. He's going to be making excuse me, he has a speech today. I think it's going to be at 5 p.m. I didn't have time to look at it. Probably 5 p.m. Eastern, I'm going to assume. I don't know what he's going to talk about. It could be a number of things. He may talk about the Nobel Peace Prize, which unfortunately went to someone from Venezuela. And I'm sure he is beyond disappointed for that. And I prayed hard that he won. I really wanted him to win that Nobel Peace Prize. And it's a very sad, morning to wake up and see that he did not win. I didn't expect him to win because we know how they are, right? But I had hoped with everything I have that he would win. And so he is going to be speaking today, possibly on a lot of different issues. I know we're sending troops over to, I think was it 200 troops over to Israel. And I've got a little video of that to show you as well. So we'll see what he's going to talk about today. But he has been, Donald Trump and his administration has been defying the orders of these judges. So just because this judge put up that temporary restriction against National Guard troops does not mean it's going to be honored, because Donald Trump did not honor that in Portland. It's unconstitutional. He's the president. He can order National Guard troops, like we pointed out yesterday, 7 different times in this country that has happened. It's not unconstitutional. It's not above the law. He is following the law to a T. He has every right to send these troops into these cities. And quite honestly, I wish we could escalate that a little bit more, because you know what? We could put an end to this violence right now, today. And I know he would be slaughtered if that happened. Democrats, liberals would freak out, and a lot of conservatives on that as well. Abe says, I heard the vote for Peace Prize was back in January for the year. So hopefully next year, it was on October the 6th, Abe. The Peace Prize committee made a statement the other day, and they said that even though Donald Trump did create peace with the ceasefire deal between Israel and Hamas, they made their decision on October 6th of 2025, just a couple of days before that took place. So they said that would not have any bearing on their decision. And I know a couple of weeks ago they were asked, well, hey, as a committee, that Donald Trump is expecting and hoping to win the Nobel Peace Prize. Do you understand, the implications? And they all said, yes. Oh yeah, we get it, And they were trying to be all very stone-faced, but we all knew there was no way in a million years these liberals on this committee were ever going to give him the Nobel Peace Prize. They gave it to Obama for literally doing nothing, absolutely nothing. We know what side they're on, and quite honestly, I have never once believed that the Nobel Peace Prize meant a darn thing anyway. Not a darn thing, just some liberalism trophy. So that's that. And Jay says he should just deputize the guard. They have in many areas. They did so in Los Angeles. Good morning, Joe. And Joe, that's okay to be late. You just got to go back and catch up. And so we'll see how all this plays out over the weekend, how many shots are fired in the city of Chicago this weekend, 30 last weekend. Lots going on in St. Louis, too. I will tell you one thing, though. The Illinois State Troopers have been very busy. Yesterday, I believe it was 27 arrests they made in East St. Louis. They confiscated 9 illegal weapons, 23 felonies in a sting that took place there, happening all across the state of Illinois. There are good things going on in Illinois. There are good things. Again, it's just not happening fast enough. I want it to happen overnight. That's my problem, not Donald Trump's problem. But now that the Nobel Peace Prize has been won, now that that's off the table, I hope that we can refocus to a lot of other things. Now we're sending 200 troops, United States troops, active duty service members, to Israel. And I wanted to show you the border here between Israel and the Gaza region. And it's pretty wild when you look at it, the fencing that is up. Isn't that crazy? Look at all of that razor wire along the border, which is exactly why on the October 7th attack, they had to tear it miles and miles, miles and miles of razor wire. That's a very serious border there. I'm not sure what I think about troops being sent to Israel. Now, their goal is to just monitor the situation, monitor the ceasefire. And of course, Hamas has stated, where we're going to release all alive prisoners. So I don't expect the ceasefire to last. I said that yesterday. I don't expect the ceasefire to last. And I think Israel's going to violate the ceasefire. I think that it's going to put our troops and I think there might have been an accident somewhere outside. I heard a bunch of horns and a big crash, but I can't see it from here, so we'll move on. But it worries me that it could put our troops into, I'm not going to say danger, but maybe in a situation that we don't necessarily want them in. Now, the reason why I think that, I kind of touched on this yesterday with Netanyahu, he's very angry, understandably so. Here we had Hamas terrorists coming into his country, slaughtering innocent civilians, taking many, many hostage. And whenever they're releasing these hostages, they're missing fingers. Some of them have been starved, they've been beaten. Who knows what else? We don't even know the full extent what some of these prisoners have been through. Now we have another release of prisoners, those who are alive. So we're going to have a true count at this point, at least we expect, of how many prisoners are still alive versus how many they killed or that perished in their care. And I think that's going to really anger Netanyahu. He's going to have a very difficult time containing himself when he finds out the true horror. Now, he may already know through various intelligence reports and so on, but I think that the anger that he has against Hamas is not something you can just shut off and say, okay, we've brokered a diplomatic peace deal, and now I'm just going to turn off my emotions, turn off what I'm thinking, how I feel about my country, my people, and we are no longer going to attack Hamas, who is just on the other side of this fence. I don't see it happening, quite honestly. I think they're going to violate the ceasefire probably sooner rather than later. And Abe says nominations must be provided by January 31st. Um, yes, they must send in the nominations. Now, Trump did have his nomination. He had several nominations that were in on time. But I really do think they just didn't choose Donald Trump just because they're a bunch of liberal lunatics. Liberal lunatics. That's my view on it anyway. Not sure what you guys think. But we'll see what happens this weekend, playing out with that ceasefire. It'll probably last the weekend. I'm not sure. I'm going to give that a 50-50 chance whether the ceasefire lasts throughout the weekend. I don't expect it to last long. And of course, there's a lot of calls out there that there's going to be a false flag operation, and that's going to end up ending the diplomacy that has been created. Then a lot of other people say, well, what are they going to do? The people who live in the Gaza region, 83% of their buildings have been destroyed. So where do they go from here? They don't have materials. So how are they going to rebuild? Now, of course, Donald Trump said the plan is we're going to oversee the rebuilding. We are counting on their very wealthy neighbors, Egypt included. We're counting on their very wealthy neighbors, Egypt, Jordan. There was a couple other countries mentioned, and they're going to provide aid to the people within the Gaza region. They're going to help rebuild and secure the area. So, it's just, again, it's one of those situations. We'll have to see how it works out, as so many situations are. And, Donald Trump has joked around, even made a video about it, about it turning it into the Middle East Riviera, beachfront condos. And, it is a beautiful area. I hope something positive comes out of this. I hope they have lasting peace. I really do. I really do. I hope we have lasting peace in this country too, but I don't see it heading our way. And speaking of peace, most of you probably don't care about this. I do. Pakistan bombed Kabul in Afghanistan, and this is the first time that that's ever happened. And I have to say, I was a little surprised by it because Pakistan has been so heavily taken over by terrorists. And I know terrorists fight amongst each other, but this was really surprising news to me. I did not expect to hear that. Also on the foreign front, we had a very serious attack yesterday. Russia attacked Ukraine with drones, and it apparently had destroyed, at least the reports coming out of Ukraine, is that it destroyed a lot of their energy infrastructure, and they had widespread outages throughout the night. I've heard still into today. I'm going to keep an eye on that this weekend and see if they are able to restore power, or if it's like they're saying, is that it was such a serious attack that it could take days, weeks, months to restore power to a lot of these regions. And we think about that stuff all the time here in our own country, that what if our enemy destroyed our power grids, our energy infrastructure? How would we, recover? Now, I don't know if it's that serious of an attack in Ukraine. It just happened, so it's kind of hard to get that information, but I will be updating you on that on Monday. I'm trying to go over some of the other things I want to talk about. We'll talk a little bit about what's happening with 3I Atlas. I said we would go over that today. Then I'm going to talk a little bit about Sysco Food Services. Then we're going to talk about 10 hard realizations about life. How can we not? The reason why I'm going to talk in a minute about Sysco Food Services is because anything that damages our country is important to me. So we're going to get into that, a monopoly on many fronts. You know, I said I was going to talk about the guy that was removed from the Delta flight wearing the MAGA hat, but I had a lot of comments here that said, well, that actually happened a year ago, which is not how it was framed to me, and that his hat really said something else. So I'm not going to talk about that. We're going to skip over that today till I look into that a little bit further. I'm assuming that you guys know, you guys are always right on top of it. So I'm assuming you know the truth. So I'm going to take your word for it. And then if we find out anything different, we will get back to that. But I've been hearing a lot more information about 3I Atlas. Now, here's the thing with 3I Atlas is we don't know anything. All of these different people, if you go out there and read the reports, everybody says something different. Everyone says something different. And now there are people now alleging that there were photos and images taken as 3I Atlas passed Mars. Now, this is a tough one for me because you're going to have to think about this from your own angle. I know that we claim to have a Mars rover on Mars. Now, I don't personally believe that we have anything on Mars. I don't personally believe we can even reach Mars. I don't think we can reach the moon. I don't think we've done any of these things our government has told us that we have done. Now, of course, we know they're planning another moon landing, the first one in 50 years. And maybe now we have the technology where we can reach the moon. I don't think we did, back then when they claimed we did land on the moon. And I definitely don't think we've ever landed on Mars or have a Mars rover. Now, that's just my opinion. You might have a completely different opinion. Now, they are claiming that Mars rover did not get images of the comet as it went through the 3I Atlas comet. Now, there's other people who claim that other countries have released some images. Now, some people say those images have been stacked, that they took 46 different snapshots, stacked them one on top of each other to try to get a better image, and that it looked like it was like a cigar shape and lit up. Now they're saying that not only did they come up with an image of it being like a long cylinder cigar shape, but they're also claiming it's spinning as it's moving through the atmosphere, which I don't know anything about comets. I don't know if they say that's not normal for it to spin. Whether we can believe what they're telling us, I do not know. But they're also saying that it must have been filled with ice because they claim they're seeing a lot of evaporation spewing from 3I Atlas. Now, how they're seeing this, I don't know. People say, well, if you have a really good telescope, you're going to be able to see the Atlas comet sometime in mid November, like November 20th, 21st, 22nd, something in that range. And then people with a less great telescope will be able to see it sometime in December around the winter solstice, is what I'm hearing. Now, again, if you go out there, you'll see so many different people saying so many different things. And I talked about this a little bit yesterday on my Facebook page. Be very careful right now with what you see on social media. Everybody's seeing these old grandmas talking and feeding to bears. That's AI. It's not real. You're seeing videos of children feeding bears and their parents runs out, oh my gosh, I saw a video of a cat being swept across the street and taken up by a tornado. There's so many crazy videos out there. None of that's real. It's all AI. It's not real. When you see those videos, just ignore them. Don't comment on them. People are getting paid when they post that stuff out there and they get 36,000 views. That's a good $1,200. They're going to get paid for that video. Don't comment on those videos. Just move along. Don't give those people any credit at all. And a lot of the stories we're seeing about the Atlas comet are also not true. People are showing these AI images where it looks like a mothership or a spacecraft. Nobody has any idea what it looks like. There are no credible images of the Atlas comet, none. Even the best scientists say all we can do is stack these images on top of each other and try to get a general idea of what the shape is. That's where they're at right now. And so for the past few days, they haven't been able to see it at all because it's kind of lost behind the glare of the sun, where they can't even see the comet at all. And when they do see it, the most they can tell is that it has a source of light, which is common for a comet. But usually the light is trailing at the end, whereas I do think the scientists agree that there is a light coming through the front. And that could be, now this is just me saying this, not any scientist, and I'm certainly not a scientist. Now that they have determined that potentially it does have some water vapor coming out ahead of it, my only guess is maybe that water vapor is picking up light somehow, and that's the light they're seeing. I still don't see any credible people saying that this is anything but a comet. It's unusual because it's the third time, which is why it's called 3I Atlas, only the third interstellar comet that we've ever had that's ever entered into our solar system, as far back at least as we've been tracking history. So that's why it's so unusual. There are different astrophysicists, and some people may find them credible, some people don't, who say, well, as an astrophysicist, and I've seen these comets and their attractions before, that the pattern that this comet is on is not normal. This isn't a normal trajectory, but it's not going to pass anywhere near the Earth. I don't think we have anything to worry about impact. I talked about that the other day. And I've been hearing a new rumor where people are saying, well, Pete Hegseth called in all of these major military leaders, into that meeting because they wanted to talk about how they're going to destroy this comet. I don't believe that's true either. However, I have heard some talk, and I haven't been able to pinpoint what comet it is. I don't think it's this one. I don't think it's 3I Atlas. There's several in our solar system right now. We have I think they're calling it is it A6 Lemon? Is that correct? And then we have the R2 Swan. So those are two other big comets that are coming through our solar system. The R2 Swan, some people are calling it the 2025 Swan. It's going to intercept with 3I Atlas right about the same time they get to the sun. And some people say, oh, they're going to collide. I don't expect that to happen. And the R2 Swan, by the way, or 2025 Swan, it is 100 times larger than 3I Atlas. And so a lot of people are just waiting to where if these comets pass before the sun, that we might be able to get a glimpse of them. And like I talked about the other day on the show, I think that was on Tuesday when I was so tired, I could barely speak at all. But one of the things I talked about, and I didn't know this is new to me, that how we, the United States or other countries here on Earth, we view and learn about space and other solar systems by looking at their sun. So if we can identify a sun or a star in another solar system, then what we do is we monitor, and then anything that passes in front of that sun, and particularly if we can start seeing a pattern of them passing, that tells us what type of planets or what all is going on in that solar system. So there's a lot of talk that 3I Atlas could be a probe, that somebody off in a far off galaxy also watches our sun, and they see the planets and different things that circulate as they pass through the sun, and they can see the shadow. And that's how they monitor us, that it could be a probe coming through just to say, hey, what's going on in the solar system. Then you're going to hear other people who say, oh, we've communicated telepathically with the beings on 3I Atlas. That's a bunch of BS. I don't, you can believe it if you want. I don't believe it. I honestly just think it's a comet. I don't think there's anything special about this comet at all. I think they're just trying to rile us all up. And I think the reason why is I think it's a big plan by these social media networks where they're going to say, oh, look at all of the misinformation being spread on social media about the 3I Atlas, about the comets, about UFOs, about all this other stuff. And look how much, misinformation is out there. We need to go back to fact checking. We need to go back to censorship because this is all getting out of hand. And it is absolutely getting out of hand. I've been seeing all these stories posted on social media. Oh, this waitress in Missouri, this waitress in Las Vegas, this waitress in Washington, D.C., a customer didn't give them enough money, so they threw their dish at them, or they kicked them out of their seat, or they, threw their coffee in their face, and then they got arrested. It's all a bunch of lies. It's just misinformation. And I really do think that these platforms are doing this stuff on purpose. They want misinformation to be out on these platforms so they can bring back the fact checkers and bring back the censorship, and we cannot allow that to happen. The only way to fight that is when you see these ridiculous stories, when you see Three Eye Atlas and it looks like a giant spaceship with windows and beings and telescopes on it, just ignore it. It's not real. It's the figment of AI and somebody's imagination. It's not real. When you see these grandmas feeding bears and petting bears, oh, I didn't know that was a bear. And you hear the same man's voice in the background, ma'am, step away. It's fake. It's all fake. If you see a little kid sitting on a porch feeding a bear and mom yelling, it's fake. If you see a video, I'm trying to think of another one I saw where a cat or attacks a baby, or I can't remember what all happens. Something attacks a baby. The dad's got the baby, but you hear a woman's voice, I got the kid. It's fake. It's all fake. There's so much fakeness going on right now. Be able to differentiate between what's real and what's not. That is the only way we're going to keep censorship away, which we have to do. We've got to keep the censorship away. All right. And so moving along, the last thing I really want to get to, well, I got two more things to talk about. I keep going way over. Next week, I got to try to keep myself within my hour time frame and not go over. But I want to also talk about Sysco Food Services. I'm only going to play a little tiny excerpt of this video. But, if you live in the St. Louis area, we have Sysco, we have Kuna Foods. Now, not everybody has a Kuna Food, and Kuna Foods doesn't necessarily go out to all the different areas. We have, you could name it. We've got a different restaurant supply stores. We've got different wholesale places where restaurants can go in and buy food. But largely, what this study proved is true, that if you live in certain geographical areas, which is really most of the United States, and let's say you went to 3 or 4 different restaurants in your city and you ordered a cheeseburger at each one, or in this case, this guy talks about jalapeno poppers at each restaurant. Even though you're going to a different restaurant, you're really getting the same food, because all of these restaurants, unless they cook from scratch. Now, me personally, I don't have time to eat out much, but if I do, I always try to find places that cook from scratch. I don't want to go into a restaurant, let's say, and get a cheeseburger that's a frozen patty in their freezer that came from Sysco Foods or somewhere else. Most of them come from Sysco. I don't want to go in and order the same copycat at every single restaurant. I want to go in, I want somebody to take a piece of hamburger, form a patty, and cook a hamburger right there, on the griddle. Not something that's coming from a freezer where it doesn't matter what restaurant you go to, you're getting the same food. So I'm going to show you, this is a study that was done by Alec Opperman. And I'm not going to play the whole video here, but I'm going to make sure I post this somewhere else so that you guys can see this video, because it is very important about the monopoly that's taking place within our restaurants. It is really crazy when you think about it, because while you think you're choosing where you want to go based on their food, you don't maybe realize that no matter where you go, you're actually getting the same food, the exact same food. It's pretty crazy. Let's see here.
I've had a sense that lots of restaurants are starting to taste the same. And maybe you too have had a sense that something is amiss. So I wanted to test a hypothesis with my coworkers that you can be served the same exact food.
Can I just get the jalapeno poppers?
From totally different restaurants.
The fried pickles. Can I get the fried pickles?
But made in the same factory, whether you wanted it or not.
Can I get the funnel cake fries?
Here's the question behind this test. Are we trapped into eating the same mediocre food from New York to Alaska? And if so, why? And who's behind it?
All right, moment of truth.
That's the mystery we're going to unpack today.
Okay, so I'm not going to play the whole video. It's 10 minutes long, and he goes on and talks to a couple of restaurants that bake their own bread, make their own hand-scratch food, and homemade food, and that's what you need to do. If you're going to go to a restaurant, seek out a restaurant that actually cooks their food, fresh ingredients, farm to table. And you got to be very careful too, because sometimes they might say farm to table, but really you're just getting the same old Sysco food. So I did some research, and I thought this was kind of interesting. Sysco is, seriously, they're a food distributor, but they are a monopoly. They are taking over the food of just all these different restaurants across the United States. They came together through 150 different organizations. So while there used to be, let's say, 150 different food distributors, now they acquired all of these food distribution systems, and now they are all part of Sysco. So again, in St. Louis we have Kuna Foods, but let's just say that Sysco acquired Kuna Foods. Well, guess what? You might go out right now in the St. Louis area, and you might go to some restaurants that are serviced by Sysco, and you might go to some restaurants that are serviced by Kuna. But if they take over Kuna, well, guess what? All of the lines of products that Kuna has are going to be gone. And then you're going to go to that same group of restaurants, and guess what? They're going to be same as the other because they're all being serviced by Kuna. You're going to get the same hamburgers, the same steaks, the same vegetables, the same fruits. And not only that, but Sysco provides products anywhere, from your vegetables to your meats to your desserts to your paper products. They distribute everything to these restaurants. So you have a restaurant, and this is particularly true, of course, with chain restaurants. That's why I like mom and pop restaurants far better. But even some of those mom and pop restaurants do. I know my mother and I, when I first moved out here, we like to find these little out of the way cafes. And there was a place we went and we got a cheeseburger, and it was definitely homemade, and we really liked that. Went back the next time, it was very clearly a patty. And it was the same patty that we have found at other stops we've come across, over the years. And that they have stopped making homemade fresh food, and they've started buying from distributors like this Sysco. And as soon as that happens, I will not go back again. But think about this, these companies, they take over. Okay, let's say Driscoll Berries. Driscoll Berries is a monopoly over the berry industry. And some say they don't always have the best products. They often buy vegetables and fruits from overseas, not from local farmers in the United States. We have Tyson, same situation. A lot of people say Tyson, they only buy by certain farmers, and a lot of those farmers can be overseas. They're not necessarily buying from your local farmers, and that raises prices. They're able to raise those prices across the country, and that in turn makes you have to pay more money for food. Because if you have restaurants buying from Sysco, let's say you live in a town of 10,000 people, you have 7 restaurants in your town. Every restaurant, let's say except for one, gets all of their items from Sysco. Well, what happens is that as Sysco raises their prices, those restaurants have to raise those prices. Not only that, but when you do the deep dive on Sysco, they are also controlling the truck industry. Because guess what? Guess how they get their food distributed to restaurants all across the United States? Obviously, through over-the-road truckers. And they are trying to deregulate the trucking industry, pay truck drivers less and charge more for their fees. It's a crazy situation, and we cannot allow a monopoly over our food service like this to continue. I'm going to make sure I get that video out. It might not be as fascinating to you as it is to me, but when I was reading about what they're doing and how quickly they are acquiring other food distribution, it honestly reminds me very much of my friend Kasia Stocki, who used to live in Poland under communist times. It reminds me a lot of what she talked about, where there's only one food source. All the restaurants, all the shops, all have the same food source. So it didn't matter where you go, it's all controlled by the government or by one company. And if we continue to allow a monopoly like Sysco, but taking over across our country, the trucking industry, the food industry, the paper industry within our restaurants, you're not going to have any more choice. Isn't that what freedom is about? Freedom is about choice. It's about choice. And if we get to a situation where your mom and pop shop cannot afford any longer, obviously farmers have to raise prices because they're not, the benefactor of one of these Sysco contracts. So guess what? They're raising prices. Your mom and shop has to raise prices. And then what happens next? They end up going to a place like Sysco because it's the only thing they can afford to do to stay open. It's a really serious situation. I hope you all go out and do the research, watch the video, because it is certainly a form of I was going to say communism. That's not the correct word. Socialism within our country. We cannot allow any company to monopolize our food industry, and that's exactly what's happening. Now, last, and this is going to be the last for me, I came across this online, and I just thought you guys would find it as interesting as I do. Maybe not, but somebody posted this, and they said 10 hard realizations about life. And I read these, and I'm like, oh my gosh, that is Far too true, not necessarily good, but talks about the world we're living in today. And then hopefully we'll have something positive to talk about to end the show with. So these are the 10 hard realizations about life. You may have seen this circulating out there on the interwebs, as people say. Number one, 30% of Americans will work until they die. Me, that'll be me. If your parents made $100,000 in 1990, you'd have to make $243,000 today to live the same, which really makes a lot of sense, doesn't it? It makes a whole lot of sense to me. Banks will loan an 18-year-old $200,000 for college, but deny a small business a loan of $20,000 unless you're here illegally. Let me add that in. Yes, United States citizens, you want a business loan, you better have a full business portfolio you take with you. You better have a good plan and some really good personal credit to back it up. If you come into our country illegally, our government will actually just give you $20,000 to $25,000 to start your own business. That's the difference. And a month of daycare costs more than a month of rent. Man, I haven't had a kid in daycare in a long time, but it is no wonder that so many parents find it difficult to have jobs, to both parents work, because you know what? You're working, and where does all your money go? To daycare. So what's the point in having somebody else raise your child, quite honestly, if in the end you're either breaking even or not coming out ahead? I can't even imagine. Your taxes, bail out banks who charge you 25% on credit cards. This is 100% true. You're paying tax on everything. You're paying your bank or credit card all this interest rate, all these fees, a lot of fees. And then guess what? They tank, and then the government comes in and bails them out with what? Your tax dollars. Very, very true. Very true. Gen Z has 86% less purchasing power than boomers did at the same age. I wasn't around during the boomers time, when things were different back then, but I've certainly heard the stories. I know that my grandparents bought a house in, gosh, 1972, I believe it was. And this was, obviously later than the 50s or 60s. But when they bought this house, I found the receipt. My grandma passed away. They paid, I think it was $7,000 for this house. It was a 4-bedroom house, with an attached garage, a nice yard, big piece of property, beautiful home. For seriously, it was like $7,000. I'm like, that is insane. And my grandmother never worked. My grandfather, they raised 4 children together. He worked as a short-term truck driver for a pharmaceutical company where he would, get up in the morning, go to the farm. He worked for Forest Pharmaceuticals. He was a Teamster his entire life after, retiring from the Navy. Somehow, they managed to survive. He never made a fortune, driving a truck daily, delivering pharmaceuticals, but they managed to get by. There is no way that could happen right now. Trust me, I work my butt off. I mean, nonstop, day and night, weekends, And now, granted, I have a lot of a big house payment and other things to pay that I chose. I could certainly live, somewhere different or a much smaller house and so on. That's my choice, of course. But I will tell you that growing up, my parents were able to afford a lot more than what I could afford right now. I know it's all true. And Dawn says, that's why I love Aldi's so much. Unique items with food. Love the German chocolate. Dawn, I have an Aldi here in town. It's one of the few places we have. And let's see here. And I will catch up to the other comments here in just a moment. I'm going to finish my list. 28% of jobs are at high risk of being replaced with AI. I'm kind of surprised by that one because I would have thought it would have been a lot higher than 28% because the AI is taking over. It is taking over, marketing. I won't be surprised someday it'll take over the security industry in which I work. It'll take over law enforcement at some point. It's certainly going to take over a lot of jobs when it comes to accounting, CPAs. I could go down the list and name them. There are so many things AI is going to do. I personally think it's a lot higher than 28%. All entry-level jobs require a minimum 3 years experience. I'll tell you, I've looked at the jobs that are out there, and there are not a lot of entry-level jobs, quite honestly. And this is absolutely correct. You go out and you see these entry level jobs and they'll say, well, you have to have a bachelor's degree or this or that. I'm like, some of that stuff is absolutely insane and it makes no sense to me. And then you go and people go and spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on a bachelor degree. And guess what? You can't even get a starter job. It's pretty crazy. And of course, we have other adults who are working starter jobs for their entire careers, and it just holds them back and keeps them at the poverty level. The education system was designed to produce workers, not thinkers. Now, that one, I just got chills from even reading that. How true is that? How true is that? We have been dumbing down society for how long now? I'm not even gonna, I could have a whole show on that statement alone. It is absolutely true. I'll tell you this. I can't tell you how many times I've been at the store and given a cashier change, and they have no idea how to count the change back, and they always end up giving me more money than what I was supposed to get. And I'm always looking at it like how did you come up with this? It's they don't get it. They don't know how to read cursive. They don't have a signature. How do you sign a legal document if you don't have a signature? If you just print your name, you cannot sign a legal document. And don't think that this was not without intention. It is absolutely with intention. And lastly, a degree today costs more than a house did in 1980. Boy, isn't that the truth? I've told this story many times. My son's father, Darren, he passed away from COVID, as most of you know, in 2021. He was an attorney. He was a county prosecutor out in Mississippi County, Missouri. And when he passed away, he still owed over $120,000 in student loans. And he had been paying, despite the fact that he made really good money being an attorney, he still struggled with money because he was paying a couple $1,000s a month towards his student loans. His total student loans were almost $300,000 to go to law school. Absolutely ridiculous. And really, you hear different. Charlie Kirk talked about this, where Charlie Kirk even said, because Charlie Kirk did not go to college, he even said, if you want to be a doctor or a lawyer or something like that, then yes, you're going to need to go to college. It might be worth paying these exorbitant costs. However, if that's not what you want to do, you're never going to be able to recoup that money. You're just not going to be able to recoup it. You're paying $100,000, $150,000 to go to school and let's say a liberal arts degree or some other different type of degree, and then you get out in the real world and you find it's really tough to get a job, and you're working. You're going to work the rest of your life with that debt hanging over you. I am all for the trades. I understand that some jobs require a 4-year degree. I don't think they should. I think some jobs should require a 4-year degree. Certainly not all, but you see it out there all the time. I am personally a big in favor of the trades. Jay says, as a kid, it was very common for a family to have a house and a car on one income. Not anymore, Jay. Quite honestly, I don't see how two people with an income can afford to have children, a home, and two vehicles. I really don't. It is very difficult. I know it's difficult. Our utility bills are sky high. Ameren bills went up by what, 20%, then another 20%. Some people just said they've gone up over 60% in some areas over the past 5 or 6 years. Grocery prices are outrageous. I went to the grocery store last night. I spent $262, and I really didn't even get anything of substance. It was like odds and ends, just thinking things I need to make other things, if that makes sense. And I did buy some ground turkey. That was like the only meat that I bought. I did look at the steaks. I didn't want a steak. I'm trying to cut down, on red meat or fatty meat. So I'm kind of going to the chicken and the turkey these days. But I would looked at the meat just out of curiosity. So ridiculous. So ridiculous. I saw a pack of steaks that I probably would have maybe paid $20 for, let's say 6 years ago. Now $46. $46. It's ridiculous. How can people afford to pay their bills? How can people afford to pay their daycare? How can people afford to eat? I just don't get it. And this is all being done to us intentionally. How can you raise children in a two-parent household, quite honestly, when you can't even afford to live together in the same house. One parent, obviously it's ideal to have a parent at home raising the child. I didn't have that luxury. I worked 2, 3 jobs, when my son was small. I had no choice. And a lot of other people don't have choices either. And let's see here. And Jay says, oh, yeah, Joe said, yep, that makes you sick. It makes me sick too. Jay said, that's what happened with the slaughterhouses and has led only to a few mega processors controlling it. That's true. The hamburger in your store could have beef from 30 plus cows. Yeah, I read a study on that where they did the DNA sampling, and 1 pound of hamburger has DNA from dozens of different cows. And you don't know what slaughterhouse it's coming from. It's all being put together, and it's a kind of a terrifying story there. And all right, guys, well, that's it for me today. I could go on and talk about that stuff forever. Let's see here. I think I've got some more comments. Let me scroll down. Joe says that's insane. Yes, it is. Nowadays, both have to work. Absolutely. Jay says, speaking of Ameren, I should be getting my first full month using solar. Jay, please keep me up to date on your solar. I just paid a $1,200 utility bill with Ameren. I'm not happy about it. My next bill, is probably going to be a little bit less. It'll probably be closer to $1,000. Then guess what? When it gets to wintertime, it's going to start going up $1,400, $1,600 a month. And it's ridiculous. It is absolutely insane. I don't even have that much electricity on. So it's crazy. It's out of control. I have no idea how people survive. I would love to be kept up to date about the solar system because I hear so many stories back and forth. Well, guys, that is it for me today. It is Friday. I hope you have a really great weekend. I really do. Please reach out to the Washington Guard, WashingtonGuard.com, about attending the Freedom Banquet this weekend. I'm sure Colonel Joe Adams would love to see you if you attend. Please make sure you go up and say hi to him, Deanna, some of the other members of the Washington Guard for putting on such a fabulous banquet, as particularly honoring first responders. And other than that, I don't know what all is going on with you this weekend. I have to work. It's almost harvesting time for me. I'm getting prepared for that, getting ready to close out the garden for the winter and get my last pumpkins picked, the last squash, and the last tomatoes, and get everything done out there. I've got pecan tree, a big pecan tree that is so close to being ready to harvest. It's going to start dropping anytime. So I'm getting prepared for that. But would love to know on Monday how your weekends are all going. But I do hope you have a great time. Happy Friday. And I will be glad to see you all on Monday. Have a good weekend, everyone. I'm Tabitha Hassell with Tabs on Tab.